Kenneth Davis, a 36-year-old single professional, resides in a bustling city, having left his rural corn farming upbringing behind. Though he has experienced dating in the past, his inherent shyness has hindered his ability to take decisive action. Consumed by his full-time role in the product department at a major supermarket's headquarters, he finds little opportunity to meet new people, as his time is predominantly divided between work and home. The nostalgia of his childhood days, when he would assist his family during the harvest season, has since faded as the responsibilities of adulthood took precedence. Despite the abundance of small convenience and candy stores in the area, they remain just out of reach, limiting his access to everyday necessities. Growing up, I yearned to escape the confines of the countryside and venture into the bustling city life I had seen depicted in TV shows. During my high school years, this desire only intensified, and I became increasingly drawn to the allure of the city, especially after visiting New York with my friends. Quietly, I dedicated myself to my studies, harboring a secret plan to attend a university in New York after graduation. When the time came to make a decision about my future, I mustered the courage to share my ambition with my parents. I expressed my intention to take the entrance exam for a New York university, acknowledging that this would mean leaving home. I politely requested their financial support for tuition and initial living expenses, as I planned to supplement this with part-time work. However, my father reacted with vehement disapproval, exclaiming, "A university in New York? You're planning to leave home, but you're the eldest son of this household. Inheriting the family legacy can be a heavy burden to bear." While I suspected he might be displeased, I secretly wished he would embrace this opportunity. "I'm afraid I cannot endorse this plan. Pursuing higher education in the city seems an unlikely path for the son of a farmer. The sensible choice would be to carry on the family tradition." I couldn't help but respond firmly to my father, who was quite dismissive. "I understand you grew up as the eldest son of a farmer, but I have my own path to follow. Shouldn't I be the one to decide my future? After all, you must see how much effort I've put into my studies." However, my father cut me off, saying, "Enough. I won't approve of this. Calm down and go to your room." I didn't engage with my father further, but my mother listened to my concerns. She had hoped I would take over the family business, but ultimately said, "Kenneth, you're a bright young man. Go and pursue your dreams at university." With her support, I took and passed the entrance exam on the first try. On the day I left for New York, my father had already gone to work, and I didn't get to see him. Still, my kind mother said, "Don't worry about your father. Take care and go," as she saw me off. I had long dreamed of this opportunity. To avoid overburdening my parents, I worked part-time to cover my living expenses. Nonetheless, I remained dedicated to my college studies. During my academic pursuits, I developed a keen interest in the retail industry. Upon graduating, I secured a position at a large supermarket. Initially, I had expected to be assigned to my preferred department immediately after completing the new employee training. However, it became clear that I needed to gain on-site experience first, as the department I aspired to was located at the company's headquarters. This meant starting in the store, where I was tasked with a variety of responsibilities, from serving customers at the cash register to restocking merchandise and assisting the merchandise manager. In my second year, I was entrusted with overseeing the general merchandise department, where I handled the creation of the sales floor, sales, ordering, and other related duties. Subsequently, I was given the opportunity to gain experience in various other departments, such as the food and confectionery sections, by transferring to different store locations. After a decade with the company, amidst retirements and generational changes, I was promoted to the product department at the headquarters, finally realizing my desired departmental transfer. In the product department at the headquarters, I accumulated valuable experience working alongside buyers. For about 2 months, I assisted various buyers before being officially appointed to oversee the confectionery department. My responsibilities were diverse, ranging from liaising with manufacturers, designing seasonal sales floor layouts, selecting products for special or daily promotions, to setting prices and supporting store staffing. The workload was substantial, demanding my full attention on a daily basis. While assisting the buyer, I was constantly learning, and my collaborative efforts with the buyer contributed to the smooth progression of my work. However, 6 months ago, a personnel change occurred among the buyers, and my direct supervisor was replaced. The new buyer was Amelia, a seasoned professional in charge of the food department. Although I had perceived her as a strict individual when interacting with her as a general worker at the headquarters, in her role as my direct superior, she proved to be even more stringent, communicating in a blunt and unforgiving manner. The role of the buyer was undoubtedly demanding, as it encompassed a majority of the store's sales area. Although the headquarters appeared to employ predominantly male staff, this female buyer had proven her mettle through diligent effort. It takes considerable fortitude to keep up with the responsibilities of this position. I believe I possess strong interpersonal skills, though I hesitate to boast. Regrettably, my colleague seems to take issue with my gentle demeanor and personality. What was the nature of that earlier phone conversation? Conveying the message and moving on would have been the prudent approach, yet I still have tasks to attend to. This is why I find the attitudes of country folk so vexing. Upon learning of my rural upbringing, she wasted no time in labeling me a country bumpkin, perhaps assuming that those from the countryside are intellectually inferior. I have never before been reprimanded for the pace of my work, but now I am subjected to the exasperated question, "Are you still doing that?" The other buyers, observing the situation, offered words of encouragement, urging me to focus on my duties and not worry excessively. While there were undoubtedly challenges, I pressed forward without dwelling on them. One day, we were scheduled to negotiate with a confectionery manufacturer, and I was set to accompany Amelia, the buyer, on this endeavor. In the discussion chambers, the bargaining process commenced. Both parties engaged in a deliberate exchange, carefully weighing their options and interests to reach a mutually agreeable resolution. The atmosphere was marked by a delicate balance of assertiveness and compromise, as each side strived to secure the best possible outcome for their respective stakeholders. "Kenneth, please get the documents." As Amelia, the buyer, had instructed, I was retrieving the papers from my bag. Suddenly, I stumbled, causing the documents to scatter across the floor. Oops, my apologies. I hurriedly gathered the materials, but Amelia shouted, "What's the meaning of this?" in her usual loud manner. Although we were at the manufacturer's office, she did not assist me in collecting the papers. Instead, she apologized to the person in charge, sighing and stating, "I'm sorry about this. He's just a country boy, so he's a bit clumsy. Haven't you met Kenneth before? Was he always this awkward?" I had been assigned to work with him. Though more than a decade had passed since he left his rural hometown, the scent of the countryside still clings to a person raised deep in the mountains. After all, it's generally better for city dwellers to collaborate with their urban counterparts, isn't it? As I organized the materials, Amelia was relaying these sentiments to the person in charge. I had created an uncomfortable atmosphere, but the negotiations that day went well, and we returned to the headquarters. Here is a paraphrased version of the given text, maintaining the same length. The transaction had to be stopped abruptly. Amelia was also caught off guard by the unexpected development. Apparently, the issue stemmed from an incident during the previous day's negotiations. I was informed that the manufacturer's president had witnessed and overheard the conversation when I was organizing the scattered documents. Now that I think about it, one of the manufacturer's representatives had left their seat to fetch a laptop during that time. The negotiation room's door was open then. This is why Amelia's sarcastic comments seemed to have spilled out beyond the confines of the room. After that negotiation, the 3 representatives were summoned to the president's office, where he openly expressed his anger, questioning the buyer's behavior. He found it outrageous to mock someone simply because they hailed from the countryside. The reason was that the president's family home was a farm, and he often referred to it as the candy, due to the Material Manufacturers Association. Given the president's own rural background, his outrage was understandable. After the incident, our president apologized, but the other company's leader dismissed it, declaring, "If you want to work with us in the city, so be it. We're done cooperating with you." Despite our best efforts to convey our sincere remorse, the business partnership was reduced to 1/3 of its previous volume. This was a significant setback, as the manufacturer had been a long-standing supplier and occupied a substantial portion of our sales floor. Amelia, the employee deemed responsible, frantically reached out to other confectionery companies, negotiating to increase transactions and rushing to fill the gap in the store's inventory. I had to take on additional tasks to support her efforts. Amelia, clearly distressed by the situation, lashed out at me, saying, "I had a terrible experience because of you. Be prepared when this is resolved." However, our president and other colleagues placed the blame on Amelia, not me. The daily discomfort in my stomach was a familiar struggle, yet I soldiered on. Suddenly, a debilitating bout of dizziness struck, leaving me reeling and helpless in the office hallway. My vision swirled, rendering me unable to stand or move. Sensing my distress, a colleague promptly summoned medical assistance as I grew increasingly pale and sickly. The subsequent examination revealed Meniere's disease, requiring a day's hospitalization and intravenous treatment. Although I was able to return home with prescribed medication, the doctor attributed my condition to excessive stress, emphasizing the importance of adequate rest and recovery. Seeing my downcast face, the doctor seemed to sense something, wrote me a note, and kindly urged me, "You can take time off with this. Please rest well." So I decided to take a month off work. I was experiencing severe dizziness and felt unsteady even when going to the bathroom. I realized that living alone would be tough, so I called my mother for the first time in several months. Then I was told that my younger brother Tom would come to pick me up. I decided to stay at my parents' home. On the way home in the car, I said, "I'm sorry for making you come get me." This was the first thing that came to my mouth, something I felt I had to say. I had said the same thing when he came to get my luggage. In response, Tom said, "Well, if you can sleep, just sleep. I'll wake you up when we get home." It seemed like he was letting me know that I didn't have to force a conversation. When we arrived at my parents' home in Nebraska, my mother was waiting at the entrance, looking worried. "Welcome home. I've laid out the bed for you. Just rest." She gently stroked my staggering back and accompanied me to the room with Tom. While preparing to lie down in the room, my father came in, looking a bit restless. "Take your time. Don't worry about just a month. Make sure to get well before you go back." Despite his blunt words, I could tell from his expression that he was very concerned. "Sorry and thank you." My parents nodded, and my mother said, "We'll take care of your brother. I'll go prepare dinner," and they both headed to the living room. Tom helped me change clothes and packed my bags, working silently while the room filled with a quiet tension. Tom had come to pick me up with just one phone call, but like my father, I hadn't been in touch with him since I moved to New York. My mother called me every few months or so, and we would talk and hear about what was going on. But I had left home against my father's wishes after arguing with him about taking over the family business. I had put Tom in the situation, so I think that's why I felt guilty. Lying on the bed and looking up at my younger brother, I finally found my voice. "I'm sorry, Tom. It's too late, but I did something terrible to you, and I'm ashamed to be coming back like this." These were the words I'd wanted to say so many times, even trying to say them in the car. Then Tom became slightly amused and chuckled. "Haha, what are you talking about? You mean when you left home?" Sure, I also had pressure to take over from Dad when it came to choosing my path, but thanks to your precedent, I was allowed to go to culinary school. Well, I did end up taking over the firm, but you know I'm running a small pastry cafe as well. I'm doing what I love, so I don't think anything of it. That's what he said. With tears in my eyes, I said, "Really?" Then Tom, smiling shyly, said, "Anyway, just rest. I'll bring you something to drink. Just wait." Indulging in my family's kindness, I rested slowly. 3 weeks later, the dizziness had subsided, and I had enough energy to stroll around the house. I used to play in this little creek all the time when I was a kid, listening to the babbling of the river. I took a deep breath and absorbed nature into my body. The city is nice, but it doesn't compare to nature. I had even started to feel relaxed enough to say that in my adolescence, I found the countryside boring. But after experiencing life in the city, everything looked fresh, and I realized how wonderful an environment I had grown up in. There were so many realizations. Thinking it was about time to head home, I noticed a woman standing alone on the road. That's unusual, hiking alone. I was still at a distance from her, but watching her, I noticed she was slightly dragging her foot. "Are you okay? Did you hurt your foot?" I caught up with the woman and called out to her. "Oh, actually, the sole of my shoe came loose," she said with a distressed expression. It seemed she had been walking with her shoe flapping for quite a while, planning to catch a bus to her destination, but with only one bus every 2 hours, she had no choice but to continue walking like that. In doing so, she ended up with a blister. Then the woman showed me a pamphlet and said, "I was trying to get to this place called the Forest Cafe, but my feet were already hurting." I wanted to give up and go home, but my phone ran out of charge and I couldn't call anyone. The place she was aiming for was Tom's Cafe. "This is my family's place. Shall we go together?" Though it was just a blister, she was injured, so I carried her on my back to my family's home. Both my mom and brother Tom were surprised at what had happened, but seemed relieved to hear she was a guest. We took care of her injury and gave her some tea and cookies. "Delicious, and thank you for cleaning my wound." "I apologized for the piggyback ride earlier," she said. She was either smiling because of the delicious taste or blushing with embarrassment from the piggyback ride. Her cheeks flushed as she giggled. Honestly, I was the one who felt embarrassed. I hadn't noticed when I first spoke to her, as she was wearing her hat low, but she was quite a beauty, which made me a bit giddy. Both my mom and my brother Tom were happily talking to her. Her name was Mia, and it seems she works in New York just like me. She goes hiking or visits spas in the countryside a few times a year to refresh. Oh, it's already dusk. It gets dark quickly around here. "You're welcome to stay the night if you'd like," Mom offered. Though Mia hesitated, she sensed my mom's genuine concern and decided to stay. After dinner, as I was the last to get out of the bath, I found Mia still watching TV in the living room. "Would you like to have a drink together?" So we drank together. It had been a while since I drank with someone, and this was the first time with someone as beautiful as her. Maybe I drank too fast, but I got quite drunk. Before I knew it, I was babbling about not having a wife or even a girlfriend at this age, why I was resting at my family's place, and complaining about Amelia. Then Mia said, "As a thank you for helping me, I'll give you something special when we return to New York. Please look forward to it." She said this with a mischievous expression on her cute face. I must admit that it made my heart skip a beat, but that's between us. The night wore on, and we each went to sleep in our rooms. When I woke up the next morning, it was almost noon. I had slept deeply because of the heavy drinking. Mia had left early in the morning, thanking my parents before returning to New York. That was fun, I thought. I couldn't get her out of my mind for a while. Then 3 days passed, and just as I was feeling down about returning to work, I got a call on my phone from the department manager. When I answered, he seemed flustered. "Did you do something while you were off?" "Anyway, come to work as soon as you can," the department manager said before hanging up. Reluctantly, I took the night flight back to New York and arrived at the office around noon the next day. As instructed, I was surprised by the warm welcome. But the reason was that the manufacturer we had reduced our dealings with had contacted us to continue trading as before. However, the condition was that I handle it. My mind was still in rest mode. I couldn't catch up. Anyway, the next day, I was to visit the manufacturer. "Excuse me," as I opened the door to the meeting room, the woman in the center immediately said, "Kenneth, hello. I'm the vice president." "Davis? No way." I couldn't help but shout. The woman was Mia, whom I had met at my family's home, and she was apparently the president's daughter of this manufacturer. I hadn't noticed since I had only heard her first name at that time. Usually, she doesn't participate in negotiations, but she would this time. Even the department manager accompanying me was astounded. The negotiation began in a friendly atmosphere. Not only was it about reviving the cut product, but also the delivery of a large quantity of new products. Remember when I said I'd give you something special? These new sweets are what I've been working on. Mia happily showed me the new products, but it was too soon to be surprised or delighted. They proposed to prioritize the delivery of the new product and stock it heavily on the shelves, aiming for a further increase in sales. Our company has become the first to sell it more than any other store, and that new product was heavily stocked with the launch of the new commercial. If you go to that store, you can buy it. The information spread instantly through customers' social media posts. In fact, popular celebrities appeared in commercials for this new product, with limited edition merchandise included with the candy. There was a huge rush of customers to our stores as a result. Confectionery department sales were at an all-time high. I was thanked not only by the product manager, but directly by the CEO. After that, it was decided that this achievement should be properly evaluated, and I was promoted to a confectionery buyer. As for Amelia, she was, needless to say, demoted. She was transferred to another department and started working as an assistant. Since then, this was the trigger for building a good relationship with Mia's company as a client. "I'm thinking of visiting your family again. Why don't you come with me and show your family how you're doing?" I had no reason to refuse her invitation like that. And now, Mia and I are going back to my hometown. How did you like it? Subscribing to our channel will motivate us to produce more content. See you in the next video.
Alright, everyone's presentations are done. Nick, the manager, said as he tried to move the discussion forward. "Excuse me, I haven't. I recently found out something." Nick interrupted me and began to speak. "There's apparently someone in this department who didn't graduate high school and is just a part-timer. Meetings should be for employees only." Absolutely right. His lackey, Mike, of course, agreed with Nick. "I'm leaving." After leaving the meeting room, I started to shut down my computer. I noticed that an email had arrived, not in my personal inbox, but in the company's shared email. Thinking, there's no point in speaking up, no one will listen, I went home quietly. The next day, I heard a commotion from Nick's desk. He was staring at his computer screen, his face pale. "Nick, is something wrong?" Mike looked at the screen with him. And he turned even paler than Nick. Why is he so angry? Knowing the reason for Mike's distress, I thought to myself, serves them right. My name is Adam. My mother passed away when I was in the 9th grade, and I was raised by my father. Well, you could hardly call it being raised. After my mother passed, my father changed. He drowned his sorrows in alcohol, and though he still went to work, he squandered our living expenses on horse racing. Because of that, I had to start working part-time as soon as I entered high school. Every month, I went to the convenience store with bills in hand that couldn't be auto-deducted from my father's account. Even though I endured it because I didn't want to be alone, I reached my limit in my second year of high school and dropped out. I found a live-in job at a distant inn. Thank you for everything. The day I left home, my father, still staring at the TV, spoke. Take care. That was our last conversation. Back then, 18 wasn't the age of majority, so I needed my father's permission to work, and I couldn't hide my place of employment. Yet, my father never visited me even once. I kept working just to survive, and before I knew it, I was 42. Years of hard work paid off, and I was transferred to the headquarters. I was thrilled to be recognized by the company, as I thought I'd be working in the field until retirement due to my lack of formal education. Listen up. Our work can change the future of our employees. Don't drag us down. On my first day after the transfer, Nick, dressed in an expensive suit, spoke sternly. There was a reason for this. Our inn was located in a prominent tourist destination, known so well that everyone in the state could sing its commercial jingle. At its peak, we had 5 locations within the state. But that was long ago. Due to financial difficulties and aging facilities, only the place where I had worked for many years and the original establishment remained. I was prepared to lose my job anytime, but now there was a glimmer of hope. With the rise of social media, the tourist area where the inn was located started gaining attention again. Depending on how hard the sales department, where I was transferred, worked, we could either thrive or be forced to give up this prime location to the new hotel chains continuously popping up. For Nick, who had switched careers from another industry to strengthen our sales, this was a battle he couldn't afford to lose. I understood why he had to be strict. I will do my best. Nick sneered at my enthusiastic declaration. Did you not hear what I said? I'm sorry. I thought I was listening carefully. Out of habit from years of customer service, I apologized reflexively, though I had no idea what had offended him. Someone was watching me with a smirk. In this department, there are those who are expected to excel and those who have been shoved here because they have nowhere else to go. You are the latter. It was Mike, the section chief. He's 7 years younger, at 35. But he was called to headquarters much earlier than I was and had been moving around within the headquarters ever since. I'm not jealous, but I can't accept that he's my boss. Graduating from a prestigious university, he has an unusually high pride and caused many problems as a newbie, making things very difficult for me when I was the front desk leader. When I found out Mike was transferred to the sales department a month before me, I was disheartened. Mike is right. With just a middle school diploma, there's not much you can do. Don't even think about achieving results. As if I didn't exist, Nick remarked, I'm thirsty. Mike eagerly ran to the coffee maker. It seems Mike is Nick's lackey. I regretted being happy about my transfer to headquarters, wishing I had stayed on site forever. Send a direct mail to every company on this list by the end of the day. Nick only assigned me tasks that even a new graduate could handle. What? There are over 1,000 companies. You want me to send to all of them by today? Yes, if you and your fellow misfits split the work, even those with nowhere else to go should finish by today. I glanced at the employees typing away expressionlessly. They were worn out from customer service, only thinking about leaving on time, or were women reassigned after having children, with zero motivation for work. Even Sam, a new graduate from the same university as Mike, who was supposed to be among the expected achievers, had no enthusiasm for the job, having joined the company wanting to do customer service. I don't care what they say, I plan to quit anytime, he said. Only Nick and Mike were highly motivated, making all the decisions between the two of them. I originally only wanted to work at the inn to survive and had no particular attachment to this job. I swallowed my words, thinking I had no right to reprimand them. About a month after the transfer, Nick told us with a frustrated look. To commemorate the 50th anniversary, we've decided to create a plan exclusive for one group per day. Originally, Mike and I were supposed to come up with it, but our president, Mr. Thompson, insists on hearing everyone's opinions. So, you all get a chance. As Nick explained, Mike began handing out prints. Make sure not to embarrass Nick. If your ideas are half-baked, you'll have to redo them. It seemed that they had printed his handwritten notes by Mr. Thompson, which included several questions and a section for free responses. It made sense why Nick had to seek our input, given that all responses had to be submitted to Mr. Thompson. We were given a week to think about it, and a meeting was scheduled to compile our ideas. My plan is to let guests enjoy both the old and modern America. Nick began the presentations. Guests would watch a master confectioner at a nearby traditional sweet shop make sweets in front of them. The welcome drink would be premium tea in a bottle. Nick's plan was certainly attractive. After his presentation, Nick called on us to present in the order we were seated. Just as I stood up for my turn. All right, everyone's presentations are done. Excuse me, I haven't. I recently found out something. Nick interrupted me. There's someone in this department who didn't graduate high school and is just a part-timer. He was likely talking about me. I joined the company as a part-timer and was made a full-time employee when I turned 20. That was 20 years ago, so Nick and Mike probably had no chance to know until recently. Meetings should be for employees only. Absolutely right. After that, Nick kept creating opportunities to solicit everyone's opinions, purposefully excluding me from speaking. The meeting unexpectedly heated up and went past the scheduled end time. A few people asked to leave, and the discussion continued with the remaining few. Still here? Normally, you'd leave in that situation. Though I had no attachment to the job initially, hearing kind words from customers made me want to make them happier. For someone like me, with nowhere to go, the inn was my home and customer service was my life. I felt pathetic about my current self. I'm leaving. I left the conference room and started shutting down my computer. I noticed an email had arrived, not in my personal inbox, but in the company's shared email. Thinking no one would listen to what I had to say anyway, I quietly went home. The next day, while preparing the DM as instructed, I heard a commotion from Nick's desk. In his haste to stand up, he hit his knee on the desk. He stared at his computer screen, his face pale. Nick! What's wrong? Mike, thinking he should be the first to rush over, approached Nick while still wearing his coat. He peered at the screen with Nick. And he turned even paler than Nick. Why is he so angry? Who is responsible for this company? Nick, more irritated than ever, asked, and Mike answered without checking. Probably Sam. Sam wasn't there because he was attending a morning training session for new hires. Nick gave up on getting angry and returned his gaze to the screen. They were looking at an email that arrived right after the end of the working day yesterday. Apparently, no one, including me, had checked it before leaving. The email was from a large company that used us for their annual employee trips. The president and executives of that company also frequently used our services personally. President of the company, Mr. Mason himself had declared that neither he nor his company would ever use our services again. Well, some companies cancel their employee trips or stop using our services due to financial struggles. Let's just move on. Mike kept wiping the sweat from his forehead with a handkerchief. Knowing why Mike was so agitated, I quietly watched their interaction. Do you know how much revenue we get from that company? We can find other guests to fill the rooms, but we'll lose the banquet costs, gift shop revenue, rental car fees, and more. Moreover, the gifts were supposed to be prepared by the traditional confectionery shop involved in Nick's proposed plan. If it's known that we incurred such a huge loss at this critical time, Nick's position in the company would be jeopardized. Nick took a deep breath, seemingly trying to calm himself. All right, Mike. Go to New York right now and apologize to Mr. Mason. What? You're coming with me, right? I have urgent work to do. I trust you, which is why I'm entrusting this to you. Please. Mike, believing Nick's sincerity, agreed with a determined look on his face, saying, yes. That's Nick for you. Even if Mike went to apologize, Nick would shift all the blame onto him if the client didn't change their mind. Well, it was Mike's fault to begin with, so it served him right. About 3 hours later, Sam answered a call from somewhere and repeatedly apologized, saying, I'm very sorry. Everyone watched to see what was happening. After ending the call, he informed Nick with a weary tone. When Mike arrived at the client's company, he only made things worse, further infuriating Mr. Mason. He was demanding, get his boss here immediately. It was no wonder Sam was exhausted, dealing with such a call right after returning from training. What is that idiot doing? All right, Adam, you're coming with me. If sacrificing Mike didn't work, then I must be next. Normally, I'd want to refuse at all costs, but I saw an opportunity in this situation. If I can be of assistance, I'd be happy to join you. I obediently followed Nick, and we flew to New York. When we introduced ourselves at the reception, it became clear how serious the situation was. As the receptionist personally escorted us to the president's office. Angry voices leaked through the door, making both Nick and me uneasy. Excuse me. I'm Nick, the supervisor. I understand my subordinate has caused you trouble, and I deeply apologize. Nick, with his experience in the corporate world, knew enough to offer an apology before excuses. However, his customer service skills left much to be desired. I sighed as I saw Mike trembling like a small dog in the corner of the room. "What kind of training are you giving your subordinates?" Mr. Mason glared at Nick with a red face. The intensity of his gaze made even Nick take a step back. Regrettably, I joined this company only 2 years ago and was unaware of Mike's issues. I should have identified his shortcomings sooner. Indeed, I should have realized sooner. No sensible person would come to apologize and then give a lengthy presentation on the drawbacks of not using their in. Nick froze, his mouth slightly open. Suspecting the worst, I picked up the documents that had fallen to the floor. It seemed Mike hastily prepared these documents on the plane, listing the disadvantages. Disadvantage 1: if you change the venue for the company trip, employees might suspect it's for cost-cutting reasons, leading to a negative impression. Reading it aloud half-jokingly, Nick snatched the papers from my hand and checked the contents with a furious expression. Among the stack of documents was a receipt from a nearby convenience store's copy machine. I felt a pang of dread, hoping he hadn't shown the receipt as well. What do you think he said when I asked what kind of nerve he had to do this? I'm very sorry. Faced with the dire situation, Nick must have thought there was nothing left to do but apologize. In a voice smaller than I'd ever heard from him, he uttered words of apology. He said, "I'm a Harvard graduate. I don't believe I said anything wrong." "Mike, what have you done?" Forgetting his plan to pin the blame on Mike, Nick yelled loudly, even in front of Mr. Mason. "I didn't do anything wrong." "You're still saying that? Look at him." Mike pointed at me with a shaking hand. "I was assigned to headquarters in my 20s and now I'm a section chief. This guy only made it to headquarters at 42. Everything I've done proves I was right. So why are we losing the contract?" Having said his piece, Mike collapsed to the floor. "Of course. You were sent there because you had nowhere else to go." Mike never expected to hear such words from someone he looked down upon. He lunged at me, and Nick hurriedly stepped in to stop him. "Mr. Thompson told me Mike is a quick thinker, and to take good care of him." There's no way he was pushed aside. "Don't make things worse here. He didn't say quick thinker, he said only quick-witted, didn't he?" I don't remember that part." I recalled the many troubles Mike caused when he was a newbie. When Mike was on the front line, his pride was so high that he never apologized to customers. Customer service, especially in our job, doesn't work alone. It brings both good and bad situations. If the front staff or housekeepers made mistakes, or the cleaning company didn't properly clean a room, one had to apologize to the customers regardless of personal fault. Mike, in such situations, would never apologize, insisting he wasn't at fault. This often angered customers, and as the front desk leader, I frequently had to apologize on his behalf. He caused complaints and disrupted operations, which is why he was quickly moved to headquarters. In departments where he didn't interact directly with customers, his quick thinking was beneficial and things went well. But it seemed his flaws were starting to show. Corporate reservations are supposed to be entered into the system by the sales representative. But a quick check yesterday revealed that more than 10 items were missing from the client's reservation. The handover document clearly stated what needed to be prepared. Why didn't you enter it into the system? Why do we have to give them special treatment? Filling rooms near the banquet hall, setting up all the food in advance. Specifying the brand of wine, they're too demanding. No wonder he always angered customers, I thought, feeling a headache coming on. Grouping them in rooms near the banquet hall is for our benefit too. It makes it easier for the staff to set up beds and serve breakfast since everyone's schedule is synchronized. As for the other requests, Mr. Mason suggested them to lighten our load. I didn't know that. Nick finally seemed to realize that Mike was the one who had angered the client. What did you say to them? I just told them we wouldn't give them special treatment anymore. We shouldn't waste effort on things that don't bring in money. I was utterly exasperated at his lack of understanding of customer service. Of course, we shouldn't comply with unreasonable demands. But carrying over successful practices from past stays makes customers feel remembered and enhances their experience. Good memories encourage repeat visits. That's part of our job. I looked down at Mike, who was sitting on the floor. In our job, nothing is a waste. Mr. Thompson likely moved you to the sales department, hoping you'd finally understand this. How do you think he feels now that you failed to meet his expectations? Mike, tears in his eyes, fled the president's office. I was amazed he still hadn't apologized. You have it tough, Adam. It's okay, we're all employees of the same company. I deeply apologize for this disrespectful incident. Especially after all the care you've shown us. If it weren't for you, Adam, I really would have stopped staying here. When I heard you were moving to the sales department, I was willing to reconsider if you handled it. Seeing us talk so amicably, Nick's face contorted. Do you two know each other? Adam's service is excellent. I always requested him specifically. Normally, we don't accept specific staff requests, but we made an exception for Mr. Mason, adjusting my shifts accordingly. He had personally stayed at our hotel just before my transfer, and during casual conversation, I mentioned, I'm moving to the sales department soon. If I hadn't told him then, things could have been much worse. Please continue to take care of us. I look forward to it. On the return flight, Nick awkwardly offered me a can of beer. It's still working hours. Of course, I had no intention of forgiving him for a single beer. Nick might try to pin everything on Mike and avoid any consequences. While pondering this, a startling fact came to light. Nick, the tea bottles for the plan have arrived. I handed Nick a bottle labeled with our inn's name. They look good. What are you talking about? These are plastic bottles. I had assumed we would use the trendy, high-end bottling tea. But what arrived were ordinary plastic bottles of tea with customized labels. The only unique aspect was the label, which had the inn's name, making it look customized. Upon further investigation, I discovered that a substantial amount of money was set to be paid to the tea company. It was priced like bottling tea. Does this plastic bottle really cost $100 each? The tea inside is specially blended for us. The extra cost is for that. Wouldn't it be better to use another tea company? Or is there a specific reason we must use this one? As Nick continued to make excuses, I showed him a printed email. I informed the tea company's president, Mr. Mitchell, that we discovered irregular payments and he confessed. He said you two were high school classmates and planned to split the extra money. That idiot. Why did he confess? That's not important. You should worry about yourself, this could turn into a police matter. Opening the bottle cap, I suggested. How about calming down with this tea? It supposedly has a relaxing effect. Nick drank the tea frantically. In the following days, decisions were made about their fates. Mike was reassigned to the General Affairs Department, with no chance of transfer or promotion, as per Mr. Thompson's orders. As for Nick, since the payment to the tea company hadn't yet been made, he narrowly avoided legal trouble. Instead, he was encouraged to leave the company, and to avoid further complications, Nick submitted his resignation. Rumor has it that connections between HR departments have made it difficult for him to find new employment. Even though it was good to have those two gone, something unexpected happened in the sales department. Everyone became motivated and united in refining the 50th anniversary plan. In the end, my plan was adopted. We collaborated with the Tourist Information Center to provide personalized guides. The plan, tailored to the number of guests, was truly special for the 50th anniversary. Hey, is Adam's family coming to stay? I immediately booked that special plan for my family. Sam noticed it on the reservation list and quickly picked up on it. Yes, I'm inviting my father. That's great. I might invite my parents too. I lacked the courage to face my father just as Adam. But here, with the confidence Mr. Mason praised, I felt ready. The 50th anniversary plan was a perfect opportunity to reconnect with my father. I hoped to bring back the days when we could laugh together as we once did.